All right. Morning, everyone. So I'm going to go back. This one is from yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. I didn't see this one, so I want to actually step in and see what she has to say for our White House press brief. So let's go ahead.
Hello. Hello. Happy Monday. Hi, everyone. It's like a lot of empty seats back there. It's August.
Good mood.
Okay, a couple of things for you at the top on what you all can expect this week. President Biden spoke today with France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom to discuss the situation in the Middle East and ongoing efforts to de-escalate tensions and reach a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza.
All right.
And as I was walking out, I believe that readout, the joint readout, should be in your inbox. So obviously you'll have that for all of to review. Tomorrow, the President and the First Lady will travel to New Orleans, where they will deliver remarks at a Biden Cancer Moonshot event.
Okay.
On Thursday, the President and the Vice President will travel to Prince George's County, Maryland, to deliver remarks on the progress they are making to lower costs for the American people. And on Friday, the President will head to Camp David for the weekend. We will definitely have more to share on this week's schedule in the days ahead. And one thing that I wanted to say, because we've all been watching these last 2 weeks, today we want to send a heartfelt congratulations to all the American athletes who made us so damn proud, as the President said, at this year's Olympics, bringing home an impressive 126 medals, including 40 gold medals. From the President on down, we have all been cheering you on here at the White House, and the First Lady and the Second Gentleman were proud to represent the United States and root for our athletes in Paris.
So the Olympics, that's cool. Everybody loves the Olympics, right? And, we want Americans to win. That's not really what we're here for. The Biden administration has really been focusing on how they were going to bring inflation down, how they were going to make food more affordable. And the numbers today for our CPI, Consumer Price Index, actually came in under 3%. So the numbers were actually pretty good. That doesn't help inflation that has already happened. Obviously, we're just kind of evening out in that curve, and kind of sitting where we're at right now. But at least it's not showing huge numbers inflating anymore. So we're back in our normal range, and then they're going to try and take on those numbers, if you believe that or not.
The President also personally called Olympians last week to congratulate them and thank them for representing our nation on the world stage. As the First Lady said, and I quote, "Our athletes carry more than just our flag. They carry our nation's heart and our hopes with them too. From basketball and soccer to gymnastics and swimming, our nation's greatest athletes gave us their all and showed us that truly nothing is beyond our capacity when we do it together."
That's right. USA.
Sports help us unite, and the Olympics remind us that despite our differences, we can come together to achieve greatness. While we are sad that the Olympics games, they're over, and we're very sad about that, it's come to an end, we are very excited to host them here in the United States in 2028.
Oh yeah, the Olympics are actually going to Vegas next year, so that should be pretty interesting to see. No, it wasn't Vegas, it was LA, right? I might be confused on that.
And we
Let's see what
have
she
the
says.
Paralympic Games to look forward to later this month. And you can bet we will be cheering just as hard for Team USA.
Sure.
Today, President Biden and Vice President Harris
Oh, she didn't even mention it. I think it's LA though, not Vegas.
launched Time is Money, a new government-wide effort to crack down on all the ways that cooperations and unnecessary headaches and hassles to our lives, wasting precious time and money, from excessive paperwork and unreasonable hold times to the endless hurdles some companies make you jump through to cancel subscriptions. We've all been there and know how aggravating these unnecessary delays can be today, in the coming months, The Biden-Harris administration will take wide-ranging action to crack down on these unfair practices and save Americans time and money, including...
So any of those services that, thank you for the like, by the way, But any of those services that just don't let you cancel and they kind of run you through the ropes and they won't let you actually get through to anybody who's actually going to cancel your subscription, I just tell them that I'm going to prison. And that seems to work. They tend to cut it off right there. When they're like, hey, why do you want to cancel? Can we offer you this? Nope, I am going to prison.
Making it easier to cancel subscriptions and memberships, ensuring that consumers calling customer service can talk to a real person by pressing a single button, and allowing Americans to submit health claims online. And this is just the beginning. We are calling for Americans to share their ideas through an online portal on the White House website and to tell us directly how federal action can give them their time back. Americans are tired of being played for suckers, and President Biden...
I'm saving you money because it takes less time to reach a utility company so they can tell you why the price has increased again.
And Vice President Harris will continue to use every tool available to protect Americans from corporate greed and practices that hit people in their pocketbooks. With that, Zeke, what you got?
Thanks, Corinne.
Right into
over
the
weekend, Vice President said she followed former President Donald Trump in saying she would support a proposal that would not tax tipped wages. If similar bill made its way to the President of the United States, President Biden, would he sign that proposal? Because that's not something he's embraced before.
I think he's talking about the Harris basically just came out on her last rally and said that she wasn't going to tax tips, which was Trump's entire not his entire campaign, but a big piece of his campaign. She pretty much just looked at it like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll just take that. So I'm curious to see if they admit that it was a good idea and if it was from Trump, because, they play like the political chess pieces back and forth. Surely she has to admit, yeah, this came from Trump and I think it's a good idea. We agree on something, right?
Absolutely. Look, this is something that the president supports. He supports eliminating taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers while also raising minimum.
But he just hired, not just like a year or so ago, hired a bunch of IRS agents to go after people, specifically waitresses, to make sure they're actually paying all their taxes. And now all of a sudden, because Trump has this platform of wanting to remove taxes on tips, now all of a sudden he's for it because it's an election year, of course.
Minimum wage and preventing the wealthy from gaining the system. And if you think about what the president has talked about the last 3.5 years, making sure that we have an economy that works for all, not leaving anybody behind, an economy that's built from the bottom up, middle out, the president has been fighting, and the vice president has been fighting to do just that. Think about raising the minimum wage, which the Trump administration, they blocked. Cut taxes for workers and families after Trump gave a $2 trillion tax cut, skewed to billionaires and big corporations. Defend overtime protections for millionaires, millions of workers whom the Trump administration left behind. Ensure workers have the freedom to join a union which the Trump administration undermined. You hear it talk about Maganomics and what the GOP is for. Therefore, giving tax breaks from billionaires and corporations. They want price gouging. That's what they want to see. They don't want to protect American workers. They give, again, more tax to billionaires and corporations. That's what they've been talking about over and over and over, raising taxes for working people. That's not what we're about, and we're going to continue to do just that in the next 5 months.
I think so. With the topic, the VP's team has also said she's going to be rolling out some additional policy this week. Given the president's endorsement of hers, it's safe to say that anything that she would put forward along these lines that also would have the backing of the president.
You can certainly say, or I can say, that they are partners in this. So they believe and certainly on the same page when we think about the economy, when we think about healthcare. They have to work through what their policies, ideas are, but the last 3.5 years they've been in sync. They have been certainly on the same page, and I presume that will continue from here.
And just on a schedule, a week from today, the Democratic convention gets going in Chicago. That was supposed to be where the president was going to be the star of the show. They are accepting the renomination of his party. That's not the case.
Did she just say they're cutting taxes because corporations are greedy and tax those taxes? I didn't interpret it if she did say it like that. She's saying the same old spiel about how Trump is giving tax breaks to corporations and somehow the little man is not getting by because of it.
Anymore. What is his involvement going to be in that convention?
Pretty much,
how much time does it
trickle down economics are bad, just that same old spiel.
spend in Chicago?
Yeah.
When does he plan to speak?
So look, I'm not going to get ahead of the Democratic National Convention to make their announcements on speakers next week. I think Americans will be very excited. I think he will have his moment as well. They'll be very excited to see him, and so he's certainly looking forward to that. I'll let the DNC convention obviously make the announcement. The president will indeed speak next week. Again, he's looking forward to it. He's looking forward to, as he tends to do, speak directly to the American people, talk about the moment that we're at, the stakes, what's at stake, and continue to talk about an issue that is incredibly important to him, which is unity, making sure that we're unified and we continue to do the work that the president has been successful in doing in the past 3.5 years.
So Biden is going to speak at the DNC. They don't have a date for it yet, I guess. I'll watch it. I'll probably stream it too, as long as there's not a bunch of music. If there's a bunch of music, there's no point in me streaming it because they're just going to copyright strike me. But any kind of main speeches, like if Harris comes out and gives her acceptance speech, I'll probably stream that.
Either when the vice president accepts
I don't have anything else to share about his schedule next week. He will certainly speak at the DNC convention, and I think there'll be a lot of excitement and a lot of, I think folks are going to be, again, excited to see the president next week.
Thanks, Green. Just to bounce on the previous question, Trump was the first to endorse eliminating taxes on tips.
Yep.
He's accusing Vice President Harris of stealing his idea. So did she get this idea from Trump?
Look, I'm not going to respond to a presidential candidate. I think their campaign could speak to that directly. What I can say is this president, this vice president have always had the backs of the working people, always.
That's a yes. Yeah, she straight up stole that idea. And that's okay. If Trump has a good idea and she thinks it's a good idea, take it, you know. It is a good idea. Obviously, it's working for him.
And you see that in the policies that they put forward, everything that we have put forward, historic pieces of legislation that are obviously now laws, are helping middle-class workers, are helping people in different communities that are normally, again, left behind. If you think about tax cut for workers and middle-class families, instead of billionaires and big corporations getting that tax break, raising minimum wage is something that we have talked about and done, ensuring workers can join a union. This is something that
But don't forget, Biden did hire all of those IRS agents to go after that waitress as well. So it's a little inconsistent. You could say that was Biden doing that and not Harris, but it's still the same party, same platform, you know. It's all really, really shady.
Republican officials themselves, they have opposed. So I think the question really is, if Republican officials, why didn't they? Why didn't they join the president and the vice president to support working families? They didn't.
If you want to not tax tips, why don't you do that now? Obviously not Karine, but Harris. You're in office now. Why don't you just do it?
They didn't. And so I think our record shows that, what we've done. Under this term, under this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, we have put working people at the center of every policy that we move forward with as it relates to the economy, healthcare, even climate change. And so that is something that we're going to continue to do.
This is one of the first specific policy endorsements that we've heard from the vice president. Is there anything you can explain about kind of how she came to this endorsement and how she'll address the criticism from economists?
That was said in a campaign context, so I would have to refer you to the campaign. I'm sure they can speak more to that. It is not unusual, right, when a campaign moves forward that they
don't believe the government when they want to raise minimum wage. More income equals different tax brackets, which could lead to more tax revenue. Yeah, they could just take that money back.
They put forth their policy agenda for the American people to see for themselves. What I can speak to is what this president and this vice president have been aligned on and what they've done together, working together in delivering for the American people. That will not stop. And obviously, as it was stated in a question to me by Zeke, the president certainly supports the vice president as she moves forward.
Kamala, like Biden, is plagiarizing her policies. I mean, for this one, she specifically is, for sure. And again, if she wanted to actually do it, that would have been the real hit. Like if she would have just proposed some kind of legislation saying that she wasn't going to tax waitresses' tips and they actually got it passed in enough time before the election, that would have been like a real hit. That would have been the move to do, not just take his idea and then run with it in your campaign. That's lame. That's not how to go about it.
And what's the White House's reaction to the former president pushing this false conspiracy theory that the vice president had used artificial intelligence to create images of the crowd?
Look,
Yeah, there's been all kinds of photos on X, people saying that her rallies are all AI generated. I don't know if it's true. Honestly, I don't think it is true. If you're asking me my opinion, I don't think it's legit. But there's a lot of photos of people trying to prove that her crowds are not real at all.
got to be mindful in speaking about a campaign comment. What I will say is that this president and this vice president, I think what you see from both of them is optimism and a belief in this country, the future of this country. They believe that there's a lot at stake. And what I will say is it's clear that that message has broken through. And
There's a lot at stake, so we need to alter the pictures of the crowds.
majority of Americans see and feel that optimism and certainly supports what we've been working on, the agenda that we've been working on the last 3.5 years. So I'll leave it there. Okay. Hey, Kelly, I haven't seen you in a while.
Hi there.
Not an answer at all.
I've been around, just maybe not this year. Is there a interagency policy review type approach to the Harris portfolio with President Biden's portfolio? So is he in touch with, is there a process where there is a checking of what she's going to put out and how it matches or may change, or ways in which she can build on what he's done? Is there coordination?
So I can't speak to an interagency kind of process in doing just that, trying to measure up or line up where they both are. What I can speak to is the last 3.5 years, right? We have less than 6 months now of this administration, and how much the vice president was a critical partner in getting a lot of the big pieces, historic pieces done, the heavy lifting. She was part of that, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act, the first piece of policy, which is the American Rescue Plan, which helped lower crime, for example. We've seen the lowest in crime in more than 50 years. The last administration, we saw the highest numbers of murder in the Trump administration. There's been a lot of ways that we've been able to do move in a historic way. And so she's been part of that. She's been part of that. Obviously, again, as I was just stated, she's going to lay out her vision. But again, they've been aligned. They've been aligned for the last 3.5 years. There's not been any daylight.
Does the president expect that she might want to move in some new directions, as sitting vice presidents have always had this issue? But
We don't know, because she will not lay out any of her policies. What she actually wants to do, besides gun rights and abortion, that's the only thing that we know. There are no other policies. Someone said that she's supposed to actually have a drafted copy of her policies come out next week, I think, that we can actually see what she wants to do. But right now, it's a big mystery of actually what she wants to accomplish.
does he expect that she might move in some new directions?
So what I expect, again, being super careful here, because her campaign are going to make their own announcement, is she's going to build on the successes that they've had, going to build on the unprecedented successes, the historic successes that they've had. That's another reason why the president passed the torch, if you will, right? Understanding that they worked together very closely in the last 3.5 years, and that was going to continue, and she was the best person to move forward. This is someone who's been a vice president for almost 4 years, a senator, attorney general. She is incredibly qualified and understands.
Yeah, she was very spicy.
Where the majority of the American people are, and that's what we can expect. Go ahead, Lucy.
Thanks, Corinne. I wanted to clarify something the president said in the CBS interview over the weekend. Sure. When he was asked about his decision to step aside from the campaign, one of the things he said was that when he ran the first time, he thought of himself as a transition president, but then he said, but things got moving so quickly it didn't happen. Did he initially plan to serve one term and at some point change his mind? I don't know what to make of this.
I mean, I honestly don't have much to say. I think his speech to the nation that he gave in the Oval Office laid that out, right? Talked about being a transition president, talked about passing the torch. You heard directly from him.
Has she answered one question so far? She's literally not answered anything yet.
Where his heart was how he was thinking through this process and his reasoning. And I would say his answers certainly speak for itself. For me, and I think I can speak for many of my colleagues who have who work with me day in and day out on behalf of this country, on behalf of this administration, is that we are so proud of this president and what he's been able to accomplish on behalf of the American people. You think about the economy, the strongest economy leading the world. You think how we've been able to beat Big Pharma. That's nothing to laugh at. That's been something that many presidents have tried to do. We're not able to get that done. You think about what he's been able to do with our allies and partners around the world and rebuild that relationship. Climate change, passing one of the most important, largest, biggest historic pieces of legislation that's going to deal with one of our major crises right now that we face.
Has she answered a question since taking over for Jen? That's a good point. Good point right there.
In this country and the world, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Thank you for that like there. I didn't see that.
So we could not be prouder of this president and of course this vice president as they work together on this. But I think his Oval Address lays out very clearly how he saw his presidency.
Any update on when we'll see him do a campaign event for her?
And no update for you from here. Certainly the campaign will have more to share on that. Hey, Wuja.
Hey, Marianne, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Thanks. So following up on eliminating taxes on tips, is that an idea that the Biden administration considered at any point in the past 3.5 years?
What I can say is the president supports it. And what I can say is obviously the president and the vice president, very much how I answered the earlier question, is that we have always put at front and center making it easier, giving...
No, you're lying. That was a Trump idea and everybody knows it. Even if you hate Trump, everybody knows that was a Trump idea. Let's not BS the people. Come on.
American families a little bit more breathing room, something the president says very often. And we've shown that. We've shown that in the policies that we've laid out. And,
And we stole this policy.
Not going to go into what the former president said, but, if Republicans truly cared about that, truly cared about hardworking Americans, they would have joined us on a lot of these proposals that we put forward. The American Rescue Plan, turn the economy around, put shots in arms, checks in pockets. They didn't support that. The Inflation Reduction Act, Big Pharma, it's going to help lower healthcare costs for Americans, lower energy costs for Americans. They didn't support that. And so this is a president that...
nobody wants your stupid shot for money.
And a vice president that is always going to have the backs of working people. He supports what she put forward recently, obviously, when she spoke recently at a campaign rally, and we're going to continue to do the work to raise minimum wage and make sure that we put working class people at the front and center.
So it's a new idea.
Obviously it's a new idea. I'm just saying that we support it, but we have been doing the work, right, for hardworking Americans to lower cost. And that is something you're going to see that on Thursday with both the president and the vice president when they make an announcement on other ways or other additional ways to lower costs.
And then speaking of click to cancel, can you talk about how it will be enforced and whether there's an existing mechanism that would force businesses to comply?
So I will be able to get more information for you from our policy folks. I don't have anything to lay out on how the specifics that will work out.
Thank you.
Hi, Corinne.
Hi.
I have a legacy-related question.
Yeah.
Biden's talking about the cancer moonshot tomorrow. He's talking about lowering costs on Thursday. This morning there were, talks on the Middle East. Has the president communicated what, in the next 5 months, what his priorities will be when it comes to things that he can accomplish over the remainder of his presidency?
I mean, I would say obviously you guys have reported and paid close attention over the last 2 weeks. You've seen some ways that the president wants to move forward in the next 5 months. When you think about the SCOTUS reform, right? He went to Austin, Texas at LBJ Library and talked about that, laid out his plan. You think about the announcement today, as you just stated, that was a very important announcement, and I think it's going to have a huge effect and be really important to America.
Speaking of shots in arms, did you hear how Fauci came out and said he's gotten COVID 3 times despite getting 6 boosters? I didn't hear that, but I would believe it.
Americans, and that's certainly what they want to see. Time is money. Obviously, is an important majority of Americans want to see. You'll hear from this president about lowering costs, and the vice president on Thursday, other ways to lower cost. I won't get ahead of that. And then tomorrow, the cancer moonshot. I mean, those are initiatives that have been a key part, that have made up key parts of his platform and how he wants to deliver for the American people. That hasn't changed. The economy, healthcare, as you just stated, foreign policy to me. And so you'll hear more from this president as time goes by, and the American people. That's what at the center of everything that he does. Making sure we deliver for them, give them a little bit breathing room, and deal with issues that matter to them. And that's what we have been doing. All of the things that I've talked about, not just today, many times behind this lectern, are issues that are majority of Americans care about it.
So I tried looking that up, Chad, and immediately when you put it in Google, Fauci COVID third time comes up, and you can click it and it searches for it, right? But when you actually look at the articles, it has nothing to do with what we typed in. It's like Fauci testify at public hearing on June 3rd. Fauci urges at-risk people to keep masking. It's literally not there. But yet when you type it into the search, it is there. So you can tell they definitely are scrubbing any kind of results for finding that. Yeah, Fauci testifies on origins of COVID-19. It's literally not there.
Majority of Americans care about it. And so that's where we're going to be, where a majority of Americans are. Go ahead, Jared. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
One more. Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation. But
okay, so this douchebag right here, reporter, I don't know who this guy is, just asked if Biden White House officials are going to censor misinformation on X. I can't believe it, man. Like, the way this country is going, like, if we don't agree with an opinion, we have to censor it. We can't have it out there. Even if it was completely wrong information, I'm not for censoring it. He owns a platform. People can go there and they can choose to agree with what's being said, or they can disagree with it. We don't need the White House being a bunch of Nazis and censoring his platform. And for him to even suggest that, like, you're a journalist, shouldn't you get this? How ridiculous are you?
It's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, no, and you've heard us talk about this many times from here, about the responsibilities that social media platforms have when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. Don't have anything to read out from here about specific ways that we're working on it, but we believe that they have the responsibility. These are private companies, so we're also mindful of that too. Look, it is. I think it is incredibly important to call that out as you're doing. I just don't have any specifics on what we have been doing.
That's disgusting. She should have replied about how disgusting that was.
Internally, as it relates to the interviews, not something that I'm tracking, and I'm sure the president's not tracking it either. Go ahead, Jared.
Just curious about the Thursday event with the president and vice president are doing. Can we expect, because that's an official event, that's a policy event,
Yep.
Can we expect to see more of those kind of joint administration events between the president and vice president?
Stay tuned. But I think Thursday's announcement is going to be really important. You're right. It's about lowering cost for the American people. It really builds on what this president and the vice president has been trying to do over the last 3.5 years as it relates to the American people. Stay tuned. We certainly will have more to share about his schedule, their schedule together in the upcoming days and weeks.
I only asked because we haven't seen.
I'm serious, man. Like, can you really believe American journalists are asking these questions? Like, American journalists, and he's not disgusted with himself. What the hell?
a lot of those sort of joint events. Usually they kind of branch out, flank out, and do those events separately. So what is the thinking?
I think there's been a couple of times over the 3.5 years that that the president and the vice president have had joint events. And I think very early on, the first several months, I remember them going to Georgia together. Obviously, they went there for an awful event that happened on the ground, a shooting. But they have appeared together many times. I know when it comes to Roe v. Wade, for example, they've appeared together for that. And there's been other times as well. I would expect that will be continuing in the last several months of this administration. And remember, yes, they do their own events and they crisscross the country, but they're partners in this, and they'll continue to do just that. Okay.
We know a president's most valuable commodity is his time, and I wonder how is the White House, how is the president thinking about how he spends that time now that he's no longer running for re-election?
I mean, look, SCOTUS. He went to Texas and talked about SCOTUS reform. That was an important way to spend his time. Tomorrow, cancer moonshot. This is an issue both.
Bob says they do joint events because she can't defend her record. What record? Yeah, I mean. Even CNN has been grilling her about taking questions from the press. Just do an interview, like something. Like how can someone honestly vote for her when she won't even take questions from the press? Like, you should be out there. You should be in the public, not just doing your campaigns. At your campaign events, you say the same speech. Nobody asks you any questions. Like, how? How can you vote for somebody like that? It makes no sense.
The president and the first lady care about deeply, obviously for important personal reasons to them. And so they're going to be together in New Orleans. You're going to see them continuing to talk about lower cost. And so there is a map out there, I think, if you guys take a look at how he has been moving in the past couple of weeks.
And just to your point, Bob, if she needs Biden to hold her hand to answer questions, what does that really say about her? Because he can't answer questions.
And let's not forget, he's had several calls with heads of states in the Middle East region. I talked about at the top of my briefing about to reach a ceasefire deal in the Middle East, and also a ceasefire hostage release deal, obviously, but also de-escalating the tensions. He spent his time doing that over the past 2 weeks and having those very important
These debates are going to be a lot of fun. Because she's not going to be able to come out there and say her one-liners about, oh, I'm the prosecutor, now you're getting arrested, and everybody cheers like they were programmed to do like a bunch of NPCs. That's not going to work in a debate. She's going to have to actually have a conversation. She's going to have to defend her agenda, which she doesn't even have her policies out yet. There is no agenda. She doesn't know what she's doing. These debates are going to be crazy because she can't talk. And I'm not saying that to shit on the Democrats. Like, I get why somebody would want to vote for Democratic policies. That makes sense. But this is so frustrating that they're saying this is the best we have. Somebody that won't even take an interview. Come on. That's it? Oh, but what about Trump? That's in the comments right now.
Diplomatic conversations with those heads of states. So I think if you just look at what he's been doing, it's very clear what this president cares about, is focusing on, and it's all at the center of that, as I answered in my answer to one of your colleagues, is certainly the American people. Whether it's national security, domestic, the center of it is the American people.
And on the DNC, how is he viewing his role next week?
Look, it's going to be mindful because it's a political event, but it's an event that he views as very important. It's an opportunity to talk about the issues that he cares about. It's an opportunity to talk about unity. It's an opportunity to be in front of millions of Americans to talk about what we've done in the last 3.5 years. I'm going to be mindful because it is a political event, but the president's looking forward to it. He sees this as an important moment, and especially as we move forward to the last several months. Go ahead, Michael. Michael?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to ask a very similar question. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about what it's going to be like for the president to be giving this speech, knowing that if things have gone a little bit differently, he would be giving an acceptance speech for a second term?
I mean, look, I'm just going to go back to the Oval Office address, because I think that address really laid out in a very thoughtful, even personal way of how this president saw this moment. And, it was a selfless act. It wasn't about him. It was about the country. He said this, and he thought it was an important moment. Look, this is a president that is proud of what he's been able to build. I've talked about the strongest economy leading the world in a modern administration, and we're going to continue to fight to deliver results for the American people. That doesn't end. That doesn't end. That is something that he is certainly very focused on. The middle class.
He's the opening act, for God's sake. Yeah, I mean, this is a stupid question. It's going to be a transition of power or speech, and he's going to say the same thing that he said in his memo, and then when he addressed the nation a couple of weeks ago, it's going to be the same thing. Like, this is a filler question.
Middle class families. Let's not forget where this president came from, right? He grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He understands what it's like to sit around that kitchen table.
So now a selfless act is the same as getting booted out by the Dems? Yeah, well, they still haven't admitted that they booted him out yet. They absolutely did boot him out, but he's still holding on that he chose to do this for the good of our country. He chose to step down because he believes in young people.
Table and make really difficult decisions for your family, whether it's student loans, whether it's paying rent, mortgage, whatever it is. He understands how hard that is. And let's not forget, when he stepped in as president, this country was paralyzed because the economy was falling, and because of COVID. And he turned that around. He turned that around because of the American Rescue Plan, because of policies that he's put forth. And so I think that's important to note. And so he sees a lot more work to be done in the next several months. And his thought process and how he sees his decision certainly is in the Oval Office address that he made. And I think it's telling. I think it gives you a little bit insight of what he thought personally. Go ahead, Molly.
Has the president started preparing?
It really surprises me that Biden thinks he was more influential to the country than Obama. Really? Did he say that?
These remarks, does he know what he wants his message to focus on? Is he going to work on them at Camp David?
I think you could expect this president to focus on these remarks in the next several days, leading up to Monday. I think you can expect this president to take this moment. He understands this is an incredibly important moment that he will have next week at the Democratic National Convention. He's still very much the leader of the party, right? And he takes that very seriously. And he's also very proud of his vice president. Okay.
Thank you, Corinne. How mad is President Biden at Nancy Pelosi?
You guys keep asking me this
There's your boy. Asking the hard questions.
question. I think I've answered this question multiple times.
Well, he has admitted now for the first time in this interview that Pelosi is one of the Democrats who squeezed him out of the race. She thought he was going to sink the whole ticket. So how mad is he?
Oh, yeah, he did say that in his last interview.
At her for that.
The president respects his good friend, former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
Bullshit.
And I think it's mutual. And she also gave interviews, and I know you followed closely as well over the weekend. She made statements like preeminent president among the top few to have served in this office. And I think that says a lot coming from the former Speaker.
She said he needed to be on Mount Rushmore. She's an idiot.
So no hard feelings?
He respects his good friend, Speaker Pelosi.
I asked if there were any hard feelings.
No hard feelings. He respects her, and I think it's mutual. But I will let the president speak for himself, obviously.
And how long have you guys known that Vice President Harris does not think President Biden is doing a good job at the border?
Wait, say that one more time.
Well, she's now promising to hire thousands more border agents than there are now under President Biden.
Wait, but start your question again.
How long have you guys known that Vice President Harris does not think that President Biden is effective with his border policy?
I mean, you're making a huge jump. Why? She did not say this. This is something that you are assuming. I don't understand why you would assume that. It's not true.
She has a campaign ad where she is saying they need more Border Patrol agents. If President Biden's doing such a good job, why do they need any more border agents?
We both believe that. The president does want more Border Patrol agents. You know who's getting in the way? You know who's getting in the way? Republicans in Congress. They're getting in the way. You know who else is getting in the way? The former president, Donald Trump. He's getting in the way. I mean, there's no daylight here. I'm not understanding the question because there's no daylight. The president believes that as well, and he's worked towards doing that. There's a bipartisan, I know you guys probably get sick of me saying this, but there was a bipartisan agreement that was on the table that the president worked through for a couple of months with Republicans in the Senate.
Me too.
And Democrats. They were told not to move forward because it would help Joe Biden by the former president. That's their decision.
And there's one more thing that came out over the weekend. There's this new Las Vegas police radio traffic that's published by the Daily Beast where officers were racing to secure a hospital emergency room on July 17th. They were under the impression that President Biden was having a medical emergency. What was it?
He was not. As you know, the president, when we were in Vegas, tested positive for COVID. We let you all know, and then we flew back here. Outside of that, there was no medical emergency. People are still testing positive for COVID, but because of this president, he was able to put forth a comprehensive way to move forward with this pandemic. And now we have vaccines, and now we are in a different place with this pandemic. It is behind us, and that's because of this president and what he was able to do. Good. Well, I haven't seen you in a while. Hey, how are you?
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Sorry, I wasn't sure.
Oh, gosh, ma'am. Sir? I'm just teasing. But it's good to see you. I was just saying I hadn't seen you in a while.
Okay. This is a bit of a throwback, but the vice president has said that she was the last person in the room with President Biden ahead of his decision to order U.S. troops to pull out of Afghanistan. Was the vice president in full support of his decision to order that withdrawal and in full support of the way that it was implemented?
I mean, she answered that question herself. I don't have anything else to add. It sounds like she answered the question herself, right?
She said that she was in the room previously.
But didn't you also said she was in support?
Yeah.
COVID's coming back, man. They're coming for your businesses.
I'm asking you if the president believes that the vice president was in full support of his decision.
I believe, and as you have seen them in the past 3.5 years, they've been partners, critical partners. It doesn't matter if it's domestic issues, also foreign policy issues. And that has been the case from day one and continues to be the case. I don't have anything else to add.
Second one,
Sure.
quickly.
Sure.
You've noted how the vice president has been a partner in all of the heavy lifts over these last 3.5 years. Given that they've worked so closely together in that time, what does the president see as the vice president's biggest achievement during their time in office together?
So look, because they've been partners, those achievements have been done, certainly, those historic, unprecedented achievements have been done together. I'll say this, the president believes in the vice president leadership, her temperament, her experience, and he has said this himself. One of the proudest decisions that he made in 2020 was selecting her as vice president because he believed that she can go on day one. And you've seen them do that together on day one of this administration. That doesn't change. I'm not going to parse out anything from here. They have been partners. She's been a critical partner for this president for during this term and will continue to do so. You will see them together on Thursday in Maryland, where they would talk about their next announcement on lowering costs for the American people.
So there's not a specific policy achievement, it's a comprehensive whole.
I would say it's a comprehensive whole. Our accomplishments here, the Biden-Harris accomplishments, are the Biden-Harris accomplishments. She's played a role, whether it is being on the floor of the Senate, right, getting really important legislations to pass through, right, or being in the room with the president on trying to figure out how to move forward strategically with the policy, or
experience. She had one job and she was a no-show.
How to make tough decisions on behalf of the American people. She's been there. She has been there. These have been, and we've had, as you know, important moments, historic moments, and she's been a critical partner.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, Lily.
Thank you. Two questions, one on Bangladesh and other one on India. On Bangladesh, the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has reported to alleged that she was forced to be out of power because US wanted to have one of the islands given to them, one of the Bangladeshi islands given to the United States of America. And because it didn't agree to it, she was forced to resign. There's turmoil, internal disturbance within the country.
So, I'm sorry, what's the question?
Question is, what's your reaction to the allegations?
So, we have had no involvement at all. Any reports or rumors that the United States government was involved in these events is simply false. That is not true. This is a choice for and by the Bangladeshi people. We believe that the Bangladeshi people should determine the future of the Bangladeshi government, and that's where we stand. Any allegations, certainly we will continue to say, and I have said here, is simply untrue.
I agree, Bob. Even AOC had more compelling attempt crying at the border. I remember that. That was funny.
Over the weekend, several Hindu American groups held a protest march in front of the White House, urging the president that he should be taking some steps to stop the atrocities against Hindus in the Bangladesh. And also two of the Hindu lawmakers, Radha Krishnamurti and Sri Thaneda, who both are from the Democratic Party, they have also written letters to the administration seeking their help in stopping atrocities against Hindus in Bangladesh and other minority groups.
So look, we're going to continue certainly to monitor the situation. I don't have anything else to add to say beyond that. But when it comes to any type of human rights issues here, the president has been very consistent in speaking loud and clear in public and also privately. Don't have anything, and he'll continue to do that, but don't have any specific engagement to speak to at this time.
One question on India, as president plans to, for the next 6 months, what are the unfinished agenda on his India-US relationship and also on Quad?
So look, the president views our relationship, the United States relationship with India, as one of the most consequential in the world. And so we work closely with India on our most vital priorities, including through the Quad and the U.S.-India initiative on this critical and emerging technology. And so we look forward to continuing to expand our critically important partnership and how it's going to benefit the American people. And we want to create more prosperous and secure Indo-Pacific and the world. And so that is going to continue to be our focus as we move forward.
I really want to see a Ducey Harris interview. That would never happen, as much as I would want to see that too. I mean, Harris won't even agree to a debate unless the moderators are completely in her favor. So highly doubt she would ever do any kind of interview with Ducey.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier the president's push to reform the Supreme Court, term limits and ethics requirements. Can you talk about what the plan is to achieve that once Congress comes back? Are you laying the groundwork in any way at this point, or otherwise trying to get that across the finish line?
So look, the president laid out 3 ways that he wants to see that moving forward. And he did that in his Washington Post op-ed, and certainly when he was in Austin, Texas about 3 weeks ago. And so we laid out our ideas and our thoughts. Some of them, if you think about term limits, you've seen conservative experts also agree with us on that, how there should be term limits. And so what we're going to do is have the conversation with Congress when they get back, and figure out ways how we can actually get this done, because it is important. The president believes no one is above the law, and that is something that he has continued to talk about and will do so, and that includes the highest court in the land. And what we have seen from the highest court in the land is not normal. You heard the president say that. It is not normal. And so we're going to work with Congress, come up with some ways to deal with this, to really address SCOTUS reform, and he wants to see it done in a bipartisan way. We think it's possible.
Is he at all doing anything to lay the groundwork now before Congress comes back, looking for allies in Congress or otherwise taking any concrete steps?
So nothing to read out. Obviously, we do keep any conversations private. But what we want to do is certainly see legislation to deal with what we've been seeing, which what I just said, which is it's not normal from SCOTUS. And so his team will have conversations with congressional members on how to best move forward. I don't have any meetings or anything to read out at this time.
Thank you.
Got it in the back. Go ahead. Yep.
Okay, thanks. The Trump campaign said over the weekend that it's been hacked. Is the White House concerned about election integrity?
And do you have any response to reports that Iran was the source of that hack?
So, look, I would have to refer you to the Department of Justice and the FBI on that particular questions. We've said many times that this administration strongly condemns any foreign government or entity who attempts to interfere in our electoral process or seeks to undermine confidence in our democratic institution. And so we take this type of reports of such activity extremely seriously. And so, again, we do not tolerate this type, anything like this, influence or interference efforts. And we have made that very clear with foreign actors that such influence or interference is unacceptable. And our efforts to protect our elections have grown significantly over the years, even as the threat landscape has become increasingly complicated. But for this particular question, I would have to refer you to the Department of Justice and FBI. I cannot comment on the veracity of the claims that Iran was involved.
Okay, thanks. And one more. As a member of the administration, can we expect the Vice President to come out here and speak to the American people in the briefing room at some point?
The President and the Vice President speaks to the American people regularly, and that's where I'll leave that. Go ahead, sir, right there.
What is the U.S. the administration is doing in regards to Iran planning to deliver hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia? What mechanism are you using to stop that? And then I have another question on Venezuela.
So, look, the White House has repeatedly warned of the deepening security partnership between Russia and Iran since the outset of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We've also warned both parties about further strengthening this partnership. This partnership threatens European security and illustrates how Iran's destabilizing influence reaches beyond the Middle East, but also around the world. As we and our partners have made clear to the world, both at the G7 and NATO summits this summer, together we are prepared to deliver a swift and severe response if Iran were to move forward with such transfers, which would represent a dramatic escalation in Iran's support for Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. During his campaign, the Iranian president claimed he wanted to moderate Iran's policies and engage with the world. Destabilizing actions like this fly in the face, certainly, of that rhetoric.
The problem with both parties, they suggest policy acting like the other party will never be in power again. Reform all conservatives out of SCOTUS, but conservatives will do the opposite. Yeah, and it can put us in a position where we're kind of spinning our wheels, but what are the systems that we have?
Venezuela, there's a report by Wall Street Journal that the U.S. has offered Maduro and his close allies an amnesty in exchange for them leaving power. Is that
so? Since the July 28 elections, we have not made any specific offers of amnesty to Maduro or others. So.
Sure. How about before the election?
What I can
because
say,
there are information that this offer was made, started last year, this discussion of amnesty.
What I can say is, what I can speak to is since the election, we have just not made that type of offer.
Another one on Venezuela, and then I have one on the Middle East, very quick one.
Sure.
What is the view of the two statements from Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico asking Maduro regime to release the voting data? Is this enough, or you would like to see these three countries doing more?
I mean, look, it's been 2 weeks after the elections in Venezuela. It is abundantly clear, right, to the majority of Venezuelan people, the United States, and growing number of countries, as you just listed, that Edmundo won the most votes in the July 28th presidential election, and Maduro must recognize it. We've said that, and we'll continue to say that. More than 80% of the voting tally sheets published by civil society and opposition corroborated by independent observers, and so we think Maduro must recognize it.
Is this statement helpful? Is a good step?
I mean, look. We certainly are going to continue to be very clear here that Maduro must recognize it. Countries are going to do.
It's ironic that this country is demanding a recount from anyone. I was thinking the same thing as she's saying that. Like, what does she expect us to do? Are we going to go destabilize Venezuela? Is that her plan? Like, we can condemn it, but we're not really in a position to do anything.
Do what they feel is the right way to move forward. So we'll let them speak to that. But we've been very clear. Maduro must recognize it.
Another one, last one about the Middle East, because earlier John Kirby said that Iran could attack Israel this week. Does the White House believe an attack is inevitable?
I'm not going to get into our intelligence from here or what another country is going to do. That is not something that I'm going to do from this podium. You heard from NSC, so I will leave it to them to speak to that and what my colleague said, John Kirby said. I just don't have anything else to add. Go ahead, Ed.
Thanks, Greg. I want to follow up first on what you told Phil. So you said the vice president owns the successes of this president over the past 3.5 years. Does she also own the struggles that this president's seen, like the prices up 19% since the month they came into office?
They're partners in how they've been able to turn around the economy. This economy was in a downfall when the president took office. The former administration did not have a plan to deal with the pandemic, a comprehensive plan. This president put that forward with the help of
Give her like 3 minutes.
the vice president, and we were able to deliver on that. The American Rescue Plan made a difference in bringing our economy back on its feet, made a difference on opening small businesses, on opening schools. Republicans didn't vote for it. We have to remember what the president inherited from the last administration when he took it over with the vice president. And when you think about inflation is down by 2.5%, and wages have risen. We have more than 16 million jobs created in the last almost 4 years. I know that you're laying out the negative parts of what you foresee, right? What you see in the economy, but there's some data here that has shown because of the work that this president has done, it's mattered. Unemployment is still low, 4.3%. You think about manufacturing jobs that have come back to this country. You think about how the GDP grew by 2.8% last quarter. Those are that data. And we understand that American people are still feeling it. And that's why we're going to make more announcements about how we're going to continue to lower costs.
One more. I'm going to try one more time on the taxes on tips. So why then have the president and vice president not talked about this over the past 3.5 years?
So again, the president supports eliminating taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers. And at the same time, what this president and this vice president has been able to do is help raising minimum wage. There are things that the president and this vice president has done over the 3.5 years that has helped hardworking people that Republicans in Congress have opposed. I didn't even talk about them wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare. I mean, these are things.
Okay, but this is completely different question. This is a major campaign promise that Trump was trying to deliver, and she up and stole it.
Things that they have said that will hurt hardworking people. So the president supports it. This is part of the vice president's policy. This is something that we want to see happen, but we have done the work to make sure that hardworking people are not forgotten. Where were Republicans on this? But where were Republicans on this? And if they were so interested, right, if Republicans are now talking about this, Republicans elected officials are so interested in getting it done, why didn't they pass it during the last administration? Why? Why not?
So the IRS last month released their report saying, hey, this is how, if you have an extension for taxes, you can file taxes on your tips. The president's budget relies on the taxes from tips. So when did this idea come about?
I don't have a timeline for you. What I can say is the president...
It came about at a Harris rally during her campaign randomly. It came from nowhere.
Supports this. What I can say... Even if you put this to the side, right, which is, again, the president supports this, the vice president supports this, the vice president has done the work to try to make sure that we put working people first. They have had the backs of the working people. Tax cuts for workers, right, making sure that middle-class families are put first, not billionaires and corporations. That is something that they've been very...
Getting a bit defensive. I see her on The View next year. That's a cold hit.
Clear about ensuring workers join a union, something that Republican officials oppose. And we've been very clear here. And why haven't Republicans joined us? They just haven't. They have not. Matter of fact, they opposed a lot of the policies that we put forth that would do just this. They opposed it. American Rescue Plan, Inflation Reduction Act, they opposed it. All right, everybody, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. We're traveling. Chelsea on the road.
Oh, no brief tomorrow. Or no, this is a older one. Sorry. That was yesterday. That would have been yesterday. Okay, so yeah, that was not yesterday's. It would have been Monday. They traveled Tuesday, and now there is one for today that has not started yet. I'm gonna leave it up here. Let me refresh, actually.
Aware of many of those.
Yeah, shut up. Yeah, you mumbling. Okay. Let me find where it starts. It looks like they already started, but I'm gonna get to where it's at. Because I can find it. Okay. I'm gonna hit the restroom before we start this one. Be right back. Okay, so this is going to be today's White House press briefing. I know why stuff is opening up on my computer randomly. That's definitely always a good sign. I'm still a little bit mad from the last briefing where that douchebag journalist came out and asked if Biden was going to censor X. I hope whatever media company he is from decided to fire him, because that is completely un-American for him to even ask a question like that. I wonder how many times they'll say Israel has the right regarding the 600 million. Well, let's find out. Let's see what's going on with them. I guess she's not out there yet. Oh, there she is. Okay. Okay. Good to go.
Very sweet. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's good to see everyone. Okay, I have a couple things at the top. So we have, as you can see, CEA Chair Jared Bernstein, which I'm really excited about, with us today to talk about some great news for our economy. Today, we learned inflation fell 3% and wages have risen faster than prices for 17 months now. We've also seen a record 19 million new business applications under the Biden-Harris administration, with a record number of businesses opened by Black, Latino, and women entrepreneurs. And we've more than doubled SBA loans to underserved businesses. We will continue our fight to lower cost, from negotiating lower prescription drug prices to building more homes by cutting red tape. There's more to do, and the president and the vice president will keep fighting for the future and the middle class. I'll turn it over to Jared to discuss that data in more detail, and I'll do that right now.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for those likes. I didn't catch
them. With you and with you as well, Karine, of course. Today's CPI report is a story of twos. First, we have monthly inflation for July that came in right at expectations at 0.2% for both headline and core. And by the way, if you want to get nerdy with me, which I'm sure you do, those were soft, we call those soft 0.2s, meaning 0.15 and 0.17 respectively, so they round up to 2. but that's sometimes we call that a soft point too. Second, we have, for the first time in over 3 years, a two-handle, as we call it, on yearly inflation, which is up 2.9% over the past year. We haven't seen a rate that low since March of 2021, and that's slightly below what was expected. And third,
But these are still average inflation numbers.
I think there are two important messages from today's CPI report. First, we're moving in the right direction on inflation and doing so with some momentum. I say that because when we look at some of the more near-term indicators of inflation's growth rate, we see a 6-month annualized rate of 2.5% and a 3-month annualized rate of 0.4%. So those more near-term rates give us a better sense of where inflation is headed. The second message from today's report is that while the trend is our friend, our work is far from done. Our cost-cutting agenda on behalf of American households is as urgent and important as ever. We will continue to aggressively push to lower the cost of prescription drugs and health coverage, housing, childcare, energy. I'd note that the price of gas at the pump is down 2.2% over the past year. That's in this morning's report. Junk fees, groceries, and any other areas where we can help family budgets. Finally, we take great care at CEA to look at what these inflation reports mean for workers' paychecks. In July, nominal wages went up 3.8% for lower and middle wage workers. And as I've said, inflation rose 2.9%. That's the 17th month in a row, that wages beat prices for this group, which is 80% of employment. This is important.
Who's feeling that in their paycheck right now?
Important for both the buying power of working families as well as the overall economy. Consumer spending is just under 70% of GDP, and it continues to help generate steady growth, as shown in this slide, which I don't have because we weren't able to do slides. But I will put this on the CEA blog later, on my Twitter account, EconJared46. With that, I'll take your questions.
Here we go. This is what we want.
It's like no slides. It's like kryptonite for me, but you know.
No, sir. Darlene, go ahead.
Thank you. Does the White House at this point think that the inflation problem is solved?
The momentum is certainly in the right direction. Inflation is reliably coming down. We have a record of disinflation, meaning slower inflation. That is...
No, you're going back to what average inflation was after dealing with high inflation for the past 4 years. Those prices are not coming down as much as you're leading them on to be, and people are still feeling it in their paycheck. Just because the average is coming back doesn't mean you're really in a better position.
Now, 60% or a little bit more than that off of its peak. And so this is a consistent trend that's been moving in the right direction. No victory laps, as I tried to assert in my comments. Our work is not done, because even as we get inflation back down to pre-pandemic levels, we still have to be mindful that too many families are facing too many high...
The reporter you're mad at is Cleve Wooston Jr. He works for Washington Post. Guaranteed he's not fired. Yeah, you're right. That was a stupid question. How can an American journalist ask to censor somebody? How stupid are you? Even if you don't like Elon, you don't like Trump, God, that just pisses me off.
High costs. And in the
How did they not laugh him out of the room for asking that?
Of healthcare, childcare, housing, junk fees, prescription drugs, healthcare coverage. In every one of those areas, the president and vice president are taking aggressive action, not just to keep inflation on this lower path, but also to ensure that we're cutting costs wherever we can. At the same time, we're very mindful of the fact that as inflation has come down as far as it has, over 6 percentage points on the CPI, that the job market remains solid and that real wages are growing, not just this month, but on a year-over-year basis for 17 months in a row for middle and lower wage workers.
You're a hero.
Okay.
It was raised just now. Thank you very much for being here. So is that how you would explain why, when I talk to voters in the field, when my colleagues talk to people, they still don't think the economy is in a better shape than it was when President Biden first took office?
Well, I don't know about that in terms of the broader
well, I don't know about that.
economic, assessment of where the the economy is, because I think people do know that the job market's been strong, 16 million jobs, that's record job growth. The unemployment rate has been historically low. GDP growth has been strong. But I think your question is a valid one, which is, okay, people I think are aware of many of those, many of the elements of that progress, but they're still discomforted by the high prices. Now, I hate to give you a reading assignment, but I gave a speech about a week ago where I really dove into this deeply. It's on the CEA website. And one of the things I talked about is the important difference between inflation and price levels. Inflation is coming down, as I just said to the first questioner. We think it's on a reliable track to get back to where it needs to be. But there are too many prices that are still too high. And I think that's one of the reasons for the disconnect.
Inflation is never going to get back to where it needs to be. He's saying it's coming down from historic highs, from recent historic highs at least, but it's going back to an average. So the inflation that we're dealing with now is probably never going to go away.
That you described, for some of the negative vibes that you described. And I have 3 words for people who feel the way you just said, which is we hear you. The president hears you, the vice president hears you. We will never stand here and say, oh no, you're wrong. Look at the GDP statistics. That's not the way it works. That's not President Biden's orientation. We believe that people are the best arbiters of how they experience this economy. And that's why we're working so aggressively on an agenda to help them cut costs in all the areas I ticked through before, to make investments in key areas, particularly in places that have long been left behind and hollowed out by irresponsible trade policy. And you see this president working very hard to reverse that. So we hear you. We're working hard to address those issues, and we're having some success, particularly in some of the areas that we've legislated. If you look at prescription drugs, if you look at health coverage, obviously the junk fee agenda, even on groceries, where the president has leaned hard into nudging companies who have achieved some savings on their input costs to pass those savings forward to consumers in the form of lower costs. And if we were here talking a year and a half ago, we would have had grocery inflation that was double digits. This morning it was about 1% year over year, and there are a number of items within there where we actually have deflation, falling prices of some groceries. So more work to do there, but I think that's the essence of the disconnect.
Thank you.
I got a raise at work. That's because I busted my ass and not Biden. Exactly, which is how it should be. You work hard, the business should reward you some of the profit shares.
Thank you so much. How worried are you right now about the slowdown in the jobs market?
So I am the chair of the CEA. Any question that starts, how worried are you right now? The answer is probably yes, worried, because I'm charged to watch every banana peel that could be slipped on. The job market remains solid. And I think that's the important observation. Yes, we saw a cooler than expected report in July, and we were very upfront about that. But the other thing we did, and again, CEA has been absolutely firm on this. We never over-torque on 1 month report, because we know that 1 month's data is noisy. It's what we call high-frequency data. It comes in a lot, so it has a wide sort of margin of error around it. So what we do is we average over a few months. And over the past 3 months, payroll employment is up 100.
Biden's inflation success, candy bar goes from $1 to $10, price drop to $9 to $80. Biden admin, this is a great success. Praise me, I am the great president ever. That's pretty much what I've been saying all along, is they're trying to take credit for inflation going back to an average. This is some heroic thing that they did, which all of the inflation was from COVID. COVID's way in the past. This should at least at minimum go back to average. This isn't some huge success.
170,000 per month. Okay, so that's really the underlying trend, and that's a solid number. That's a good number. That's a number that's strong enough to support consumer spending, ongoing growth, and a steady a steady transition to continued growth in the overall economy. At the same time, and I said this a minute ago, This job market is generating wage gains that are beating prices, not just in July, but for the past 17 months for the 80% of the workforce that's blue collar in manufacturing or non-managers in services. That's a really important number. It helps keep the economy moving forward. So yes, we're aware of the cooling. Certainly some of that was expected, but 1 month does not a new trend make. And I think, one thing you will see I can assure you that you will see very, extensive analysis of the next jobs report to see where that fits in this picture.
Just kind of following up on that, Jared. Last week there was a little bit of market turmoil. The markets come back up again since then. But connected to that, there was discussion of a recession and other economic sort of doomsday scenarios coming. What's your take on that?
Specifically on the recession question?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think the most helpful thing we can do at CEA and here the White House economics team is to look at where we are and the conditions that define the current economy. So we most recently saw a GDP growth rate that was 2.8%. Of course, that's very strongly non-recessionary. If you believe that trend GDP growth is something in the 2% neighborhood.
This guy talks like a Sesame Street character.
That's actually the forecast of what GDP growth will be in the current quarter, in Q3. If you look at the shops that try to back that out, they're right around 2%. Some are higher, some are a little lower. That's about trend GDP growth. We have ongoing wage growth supporting ongoing consumer spending. We'll look at retail sales tomorrow to see where that is. But all of these numbers are clearly non-recessionary. So the idea that we're in a recession now, I think, is very, thoroughly disproved by any set of indicators you want to look at. But of course, that asks us to look forward, look around a corner. And, that's particularly hard to do right now. And from this podium, I'm not going to make probability suggestions about that. There are lots of market shops you can turn to for that. What I will say...
Where does he get these numbers? I'm not even so much questioning the numbers. I think what he's saying is accurate, but them trying to play into this being this huge win, that's where I'm kind of questioning. Like, I don't know anybody who's not struggling with groceries. I don't know what he's talking about when he's saying that wages are above grocery levels.
Is that so far in this economy, the fact that the strong job market, which has maintained job gains, 170,000 jobs on average over the past 3 months.
Or job gains. I have no idea what he's talking about. As me, working in tech, everybody's losing their job. Everybody's getting laid off.
And real wage gains in an economy that 70% consumer spending has been doing a great job of keeping the economy moving forward. As long as we're seeing easing inflation, steady wage growth that's beating prices. By the way, lower gas prices seem to me important in that regard. They're down something like 35 cents relative to a year ago. That also helps on the consumer side. I think all of those help in terms of forward motion. And so I would say that, current conditions, non-recessionary, looking around the corner, we'll watch very closely where we're going, but these indicators have been consistently positive.
People commenting on the economy are not the same people impacted by the economy, that's for sure. Absolutely.
I don't think people were saying we're in recessionary conditions right now. I think they were talking about that around the corner piece, saying that it's coming.
Yeah, well, I think that the point I was just trying to make is that if you look at the factors that have gotten us to where we are right now, those factors continue to propel the economy forward.
Good, MJ.
Thanks, Jared. So just to confirm, when the president says, as he just did, we're going to have a soft landing, my policies are working, do you share in that confidence on a soft landing, particularly given what you just said about the jobs?
Well, I think what I just said is very much consistent with the president's comment. That is, the president was essentially underscoring the baseline forecast. And the baseline forecast is very much what I just described. You can hear the Fed talk about, Chair Powell talk about similar kinds of numbers. If you look at some of the market shops we follow, similar kinds of dynamics, similar probabilities. The president was saying that, in my language, the president was saying is that the baseline forecast is that we will most likely continue on a steady, stable path based on easing inflation, rising real wages, a job market that remains solid.
And just to follow up, one other thing he also just said was, my policies are working, there's going to be a soft landing, start writing that way. Do you know if he feels that the economic coverage has generally been off or wrong?
Well, what do you think he meant by start writing that way?
I'm asking
I mean, that's the first I've heard that he said that. I can only interpret it, to mean that he thinks that that's not being done.
Do you think that?
Do I think what specifically?
That coverage about the economy has generally been off or wrong?
I don't know one way or the other. I read a lot of your work and I see stuff I like and stuff that doesn't resonate with me as much. There's been some nice research on this over at the Brookings Institute. My former colleague Ben Harris and others have looked at the extent to which reporting has been increasingly negative on the economy. And they find, and they're crunching some real numbers, that that's been the case. There was another study that I found looked to me that was pretty rigorous, that suggested that the media tends to write about the gas price when it goes north of $3.50 and not when it goes south of $3.50. So the gas price, as I looked this morning, was I think $3.45. And if you haven't written about it, maybe you want to.
Okay, he's actually...
Gas prices should not be included in any Biden admin praise. He spent the last 3 years claiming he can't control the gas prices, and then he started drilling again.
Been called by the president, so I'm going to do this real quick. Go ahead.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on the stubbornness?
Stop talking about it.
What are your thoughts on the stubbornness of shelter inflation in the wake of today's report?
Important question. So shelter inflation was, I believe, 0.2% in June and 0.4% in July. Again, on the CPI tweet thread this morning, we go into this in greater detail, and we show that, again, the trend is moving in the right direction, but it's been more stubborn than many of us would like. Look, here at the White House, I'm sure you know, if you've been following the work that we've done in this space, that we are very much concerned and activated around the 10-year in the making shortage of affordable housing. We have a deep set of plans. The president and the vice president are all in on building millions of units of affordable housing to chip away at this decade-long shortfall that is so crucial if people are going to achieve the American dream. And that's something, again, that the president and vice president are deeply committed to. But we can't, and Congress needs to work with us on that, okay? That is not a blue, red, or purple issue. The housing shortage exists in every state. So that's something there should be bipartisan cooperation on. If you think about a policy like LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit, this is a policy that's admired by bankers, by builders, and by low-income housing advocates for multifamily housing. That's a rare triumvirate. That should be a kind of a no-brainer in this context. But we're not waiting for Congress to get on board. We're doing all we can, including an announcement earlier this week on ways we think we can help increase the supply of affordable housing, which I probably don't have time to go into right now. But there was a fact sheet yesterday that was, I thought, very good.
Okay, we got to go really quick. Go ahead, Osmo.
I might check that out.
Thanks for doing this. Hey, I wanted to know, given that the year-over-year inflation rate fell down below 3%, according to the data we got, for the first time since the spring of 2021, we're talking about 3 years. With the benefit of hindsight, do you feel like there's anything the administration could have done differently over the course of the last 3 years?
I think the most important thing we did when I see a trend like the one I would show you if I had a slide behind me, is get to work in 2021 on the clear factor that was so causally linked to the uptick in inflation, and that was the snarling of global supply chains. In 2021, this president started something called the Supply Chains Disruption Task Force. Now, you may wonder, why are we talking about this nerdy little group that got to work low these many years ago? Well, because that group, we're sending our port envoy out to Long Beach and LA to deal with the snarl ups there, working hand in hand. We never could have done this ourselves, hand in hand with the private sector to unsnarl supply chains. And as our work has shown, if you look at the contribution of supply snarl up and non-snarl up, and especially if you interact it with the strong demand that was in place over that period, that explains over 80% of the run-up in inflation and 80% of the disinflation we've experienced. So, you could always look back and say things, maybe you could have done differently. But one thing I'm very proud of, and I give the president a lot of credit for, was recognizing early on that by working with the private sector to unsnarl supply chains, we were going to make a big difference in pulling forward the disinflation that we're seeing even as of this morning.
All right, and we got to wrap it up.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Greg.
He's taking up all the
so
time.
You said we hear you, but we've been hearing that message.
He's just making shit up now.
Form over the past 3 years, and the fact is the prices are not coming down; they're going up. Debt is also rising; that's going up.
Yep.
So why should Americans believe the president and vice president?
Well, there's some prices that are definitely coming down. So there are
Americans don't believe any of this. They can see it in their paycheck.
Airfares. Airfares are, hold on. Airfares, hold on. Yes, airfares are lower now than when President Biden took office. So airfares are lower now than they were pre-pandemic. And airfares have been falling.
Nobody's traveling, man. Nobody has money to travel.
For about 15 months in a row, year over year. And of course, prescription drugs. If you look at prescription drugs, that's an area where we've taken firm action to lower prices. I would also say the following. We have more work to do. Prices are still too high. You have a point. Prices are still too high. And that's why you will hear the president and the vice president.
How many Americans work airfare into their monthly budget? Exactly what I'm saying. Nobody's traveling. They have to bring the prices down just to get somebody on the plane to keep their business going because nobody has money to travel.
Continue I feel like we make announcements every week on this, including this week with housing supply and forthcoming announcements I'm not allowed to talk about that are coming on Friday. Tomorrow. But I wish I could say something about them that are very much in this spirit. So, I think the question is, to me, are you, I mean, your question is you're thinking about sort of the way I'm thinking about it, which is, okay, we hear you. Are we taking action? Yes. I think the answer there is a strong yes. We are taking action to cut costs. Housing, which you saw this week, other things which I can't talk about, which you'll see tomorrow. Of course, prescription drugs, of course, healthcare, junk fees, airlines, airfares. Now, groceries is something the president has used the bully pulpit to nudge grocers, saying, or food producers, if your input costs are coming down, which they are, then instead of padding your profit margins, how about passing some of those savings forward to consumers? We've seen a lot of grocers who have gone into the newspapers and said, yeah, we're doing that. Now you can say, that's because the president said so or for other reasons, but that's, a good coincidence.
But still energy prices too. I mean, it went from when the date President Biden came into office to today, the stuff that people need is up.
So the price of gas is down. Over the past year, is the price of gas higher than when the president took office? Sure, that's going to be the case over many presidents because, that's a price, it's a global price that tends to go up over time. I think the question you always have to ask yourself in this is twofold.
Okay, you don't get to say gas goes up over time. This is still in our average, and then say we're heroes because inflation went down even though you're just meeting averages again. That doesn't work.
One, are we taking action to help lower costs? I think on energy, the president has a great record. He oversaw the largest release of barrels of oil from the strategic reserve, not just ours, but he coordinated something you can do if you have a responsible foreign policy. He coordinated with us.
I heard the woke mind virus is preventing people from voting for the presidential candidate who was found guilty of felonies. Aren't you that lady that was like mad at me because I said something or other, and then you left because I don't know, you said you didn't like me anyway, and then you showed back up.
Other countries to
I didn't ban you though. I let you speak.
Barrels of oil from their strategic reserves.
Just for the record.
He did something else. That's point one. Are you taking action? Unequivocal yes. Part two, don't just look at the price side of the equation. Somebody was asking me about newspaper articles that are negative. So one of the things that I will say gets under my skin is when reporters say this price is up 10%, this price is up 20%, and they end the piece there. You also have to look at the income side of the equation. How much have wages gone up? How much has income gone up? I think it's the Joint Committee, the Joint Economics Committee, Democrats on the Joint Economics Committee did a study of this, and they found that for the average household, their income is up, $3,000 pre-pandemic, because you have to.
I could have sworn that we were energy independent a couple of years ago. Now we're begging for oil like a crackhead asking for change. Well, yeah, because they stopped drilling, and then they decided, oh, that was a bad idea, and they started drilling again.
Factor in both job gains and wage gains, and when you do that, you get a much more complete picture. So please look at both sides of the ledger, not just the price side of the ledger, but the wage side of the ledger. Wages have been beating prices for 17 months in a row. That has to mean something.
But the president's been in office 42 months, and I know this is all. The president has been in office 42 months.
Speaking of the president.
Look at him yell at him.
1.3% from the month President Biden got in office.
So I think that if you look at the wages of production non-supervisory workers, I'll have to check that out. Or at least pre-pandemic, yes. So pre-pandemic, I know that those wages are up. Now, when the president took office, hold on a second, sorry.
Not me.
Oh, he's pissed now.
When the president took
this
office,
guy's getting mad.
there was a real spike in wages. Around the time the president took office, there was a real spike in wages. This had nothing to do with the president, okay? And you never heard him take credit for it. The reason why it happened is because in the pandemic, a large group of low-wage workers dropped out of the labor force. And
He did take credit for that, though.
mechanically pushes up that number. So what you have to do, and we have tables and graphs, and they're in my speech that I gave at EPI a couple of weeks ago. So I'll make sure you have them. You have to control for that. And when you do that, you see that compensation is up. You see that disposable personal income, real, controlling for inflation, is up. So do me a favor, whenever you're writing about prices, look at the other side of the ledger and write about wages and incomes as well, and the pace at which, in many cases, this does depend on your starting point. In many cases, they're going to be beating prices, and that's a good development.
All right. I would love for you to stay here much longer, but the president is actually asking for you.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Jared.
It's kind of important.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Come back. Okay, I have a couple things at the top, and then we'll get going.
They didn't drop out of the labor force. They were kicked out of the labor force. Yeah, exactly.
So today, President Biden dropped by the first ever White House Creator Economy Conference, a convening of 100 digital creators and industry professionals to discuss the most pressing challenges and opportunities facing the creator economy. Participating creators work, produce, and publish content across the digital media landscape.
That's me.
The Biden-Harris administration has taken historic steps to engage digital creators and works hard to meet Americans where they are officially.
Have you seen that Harris has been trying to go around to every streamer that's really popular and offer them money, and they all refused? Just to promote her. She went to a bunch of big streamers, offered them buku bucks just to do a stream with her, and they were all like, nah, bro, I'm not doing that.
Officials at the highest level of this White House have engaged creators extensively, hosting regular virtual and in-person briefings with digital creators on policy issues, hosting State of the Union watch events for creators at the White House, and last year, hosting the first ever White House holiday party for digital creators. This engagement will continue. On Friday, President Biden will be joined by civil rights leaders, community members, and elected officials in the Oval Office to sign a proclamation to designate the Springfield 1909 Race Riot National Monument. This week, we mark the 116th anniversary of the Springfield 1908 Race Riot, a horrific attack by a white mob on a black community that civil rights leaders highlighted to spark national action on civil rights. We will share additional information soon regarding this particular designation. Now, when the president...
She tried on a lot of them. I mean, there's definitely some paid creators that are actually doing what she says. But we're talking like she went to high-level streamers that are running crazy businesses from their streams and making so much money to the point that they don't have to fold. Like, they don't need this money. And yet... then she was trying to claim that she never did it, even though the people had receipts.
And the vice president took office, they inherited the biggest increase in the murder rate on record. They went to work immediately, passing the biggest investment in public safety, including historic law enforcement funding through the American Rescue Plan, which every Republican in Congress voted against. President Biden and Vice President Harris also passed the most significant gun reform law in almost 30 years. And now we're seeing the results of that action. Violent crime has plunged to its lowest ever in almost 50 years.
And Trump meets with everyone who asked for it. Yeah, he did a stream with Aiden Ross, which, I mean, you could say he's a douchebag or not, depending if you like him. But yeah, he's meeting with everyone. Just met with Elon. Just did a whole interview on X. he will have an open conversation with people.
And today, Axios reported new preliminary data from major U.S. cities shows that homicides were down during the first full 6 months of President Biden's last year in office, more than 70% in some places compared to the same time of President Trump's last year. The historic declines in crime mean that America is safer, and we remain focused on building on this progress. Finally, more than 2 weeks after the elections in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro has yet to come clean about the July 28 presidential election results. Yesterday, the UN panel of experts that was in Venezuela recently published their interim results. And I encourage you all to take a look at the report online when you have a moment. But I wanted to take this time to read one of their conclusions.
Okay.
The results management process of the CNE fell short of the basic transparency and integrity measures that are essential to holding credible elections. It did not follow national legal and regulatory provisions, and all stipulated deadlines were missed. In the experience of the panel, the announcement of an election outcome without a publication of its details or the release of tabulated results to candidates has no precedent in contemporary democratic elections. It is abundantly clear to the majority of the Venezuelan people, the United States, and a growing number of countries that the CNE has not provided full, detailed, tallied votes because they would show that Armando Gonzalez Urrutia won the votes. Maduro must recognize it and engage in a constructive, inclusive dialogue in good faith with the opposition to restore democratic norms peacefully in accordance with Venezuelan electoral law and the wishes of the people. With that,
Are they really asking us to read a statement that was pushed by them about a political opponent? That's funny there. Yeah, and I mean, the conclusion is probably right. There probably was election fraud.
Darlene?
Thank you.
I don't think anyone's
Two
arguing that.
questions. A top Hamas official told AP in an interview today that the group is losing faith with the ability of the United States to broker a ceasefire in Gaza. How do you restore that faith?
So look, we expect, just to give an update on what we expect to see tomorrow, obviously this week, we expect these talks to move forward. As planned, Director Burns and Brett McGurk will both travel to Qatar for these discussions. There's always a lot of public posturing in advance. We've seen that before. It's not new of these talks, and I'm not going to certainly weigh in on any of that, just like I'm not going to discuss the details of the negotiation from this podium. We do not negotiate in public, so we're not going to do that. Our view continues to be that it is critical that we reach a deal. It is important that we do so. The resumption of talks on Thursday is an important step. It is an important step to continue that. We need to release the hostages. As you all know, some of those hostages are American hostages. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that lasting relief delivered to Palestinian civilians in Gaza and lower the tension in the region. We've said this many times before. This hostage deal, this ceasefire deal, this end of war will help lower tensions in the region. And so that's what the deal is going to do, and that's what we want to see. The United States is going to be there tomorrow, and we are ready. We are ready to continue these discussions. And as I've said before, and as my colleagues from NSC have said many times before, we are working 24/7 around the clock to get this done, to get this deal done.
And on the Springfield monument that you just mentioned, the president will designate on Friday. Did the death by police of Sonia Massey have any role in that? Was that a factor?
And so look, we appreciate that question, obviously. And so we've been eyeing this for some time now. This week's anniversary has been on our radar for a very long time. And so members of the community have been working toward this monument designation for years. And this is something that the Biden-Harris administration thinks it's critically important. We released statements on Sonia Massey's tragic murder. You also heard from me speak about that just in this room, about her murder just a few weeks ago when it occurred. And look, as the president has said, we have made great strides to march toward full equality, but America has never lived up to it in its entirety. And so we're committed. This administration is committed to both telling the full story of America and ensuring that justice system certainly works for all. And we will continue to work on the future on both of those goals. And you could be sure that this is something that the Biden-Harris administration is going to be steadfast about.
Thank you.
Got something.
Thanks, Corinne. The New York Times is reporting that Hunter Biden sought help from a U.S. ambassador on behalf of Burisma while he was on the company's board and while Biden was vice president. So what's Biden's reaction to this, and is he concerned about what this looks like to the American public?
So I'll just report what I've said before, is that the president has never done business with his...
How long has this ceasefire agreement been worked on now? A long time. They've been talking about this for at least months for now.
Son, and he was not aware of this, and for anything...
Which I get it. It's going to be a complicated situation. I understand that.
Further, I would have to refer you to Hunter Biden's personal representatives. I can't speak beyond that. But again, I've said this before, the president was not in business with his son, and this is the first time, he was not aware of this, and for anything further, you would have to reach out to Biden.
And
Hunter Biden.
You've said from the podium that President Biden would not pardon his son. If Vice President Harris is elected, would he tell her also to not pardon?
I mean, that's a hypothetical that look, the president, I can speak for the president, and he said he would not pardon his son, and I'm just going to leave it there.
Thanks, Doreen. 2 days ago, John Kirby said that it was the U.S.'s assessment that it was increasingly likely that an attack by Iran and or its proxies could unfold perhaps in the coming days. Since then, has the assessment changed at all?
I would say the assessment has not changed. What my colleague said, what the Admiral said, still stands. But look, and I've said this many times before, he has said this, NSC has said this, we are...
Hi, I'm Joe Biden. I have no idea what my son is doing with the name or business partners, even though I was on the calls. No idea.
We're working pretty diligently on the diplomatic efforts here. You heard
Absolutely.
me talk about my colleagues who will be in the region, right, to continue to have those diplomatic conversations. And this is why tomorrow we believe is important. We believe getting to a ceasefire deal, ending this war, will lead to bringing down the tensions in the Middle East. And diplomacy is critical. Diplomacy is important. This is something that the president, as you know, when it comes to foreign policy, believes at his core. And it is not for me to speak to what Iran and its proxies are going to do. I can't speak to that.
That's fair.
And I don't have anything to say beyond what the Admiral shared with all of you a couple days ago.
Okay, so is that why Secretary Blinken postponed his trip, because of this assessment?
So look, you would have to reach out to the Secretary's office to get the reasoning behind it. I just laid out the CIA director is going to be there. Brett McGurk from NSC is going to be there. And so that travel continues. And I talked about Amos Hochstein, who was also in the region. I mentioned that yesterday during the gaggle. So you see many of my colleagues are in the region, and diplomacy is what we see as the way forward here. And we've given you readouts of the president talking to heads of state, whether in Egypt, Qatar, and Jordan, over the past week or so, to continue those conversations, and European counterparts as well, very recently this week, because he believes in having those diplomatic conversation as important. And let's not forget, there was the military as well, working with the military to deter the escalations as well. You've seen the statements from the Department of Defense and what they're doing to bolster forces in the region as well, to be ready.
On another topic, just now, the president, in contrasting content creators with the press, he said the biggest thing you've got going for you, and I hope you keep it, is you're trusted, and it makes a difference. Does the president believe everything influencers and content creators post is accurate and nonpartisan?
I mean, look, I don't have the full context. Didn't see the back and forth of what exactly the president was saying there. I think what he is saying, they are influencers, right? And I would say, even as you all, right? You all are important, critically important, providing information to the American people. And we certainly respect the platforms that creators have and the platforms you all have. And it plays an important role in informing the American people. And that's as far as I can go, is the platform that you have and how important it is, the platform that they have specifically, as you're asking me about creators.
She's just rambling now. I wonder what they told creators about TikTok possibly being banned. Who specifically? What do you mean? Oh yeah. Oh, you mean Biden wanting to ban it originally? Well, I mean, it was a security issue. It's a complicated issue.
And making sure that that information gets to the American people. I can't speak to specifically of what the president meant. I have to.
They ended up not banning it. That whole thing disappeared. Like they were gonna ban it, and then they didn't ban it. They came to like no conclusion. They just gave up, or what?
Talk to him and get more info of what he was thinking about and at that moment. And
I personally don't have TikTok, so I don't keep up with it. I don't know anything really about TikTok. I had an account at one point, but they banned me. So my social media influence on TikTok didn't last very long.
Yes, I haven't had a chance to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corinne. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know. There's always. There we go. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
When did you guys learn that Vice President Harris wants to distance herself from Bidenomics?
Why do you think that?
There he goes again.
Is now reporting that she is hoping to distance herself from President Biden's unpopularity on the economy. Can you blame her?
Do you know this is the Biden-Harris administration? Are you aware that this is the Biden-Harris administration? And she is indeed the vice president.
But if the president's policies on the economy were working, or if they were popular, wouldn't he still be the candidate?
You literally just had the chair of the CEA here who laid out a pretty robust point by point about the economy and what's has happened under the Biden-Harris administration. And I thought it was pretty convincing. Look, as far as anything that the vice president wants to do, or as she's talking about her policy that's campaign related, you would have to speak to her. One thing that I know for sure is that this president, this vice president are fighting very hard to make sure that the middle class is stronger.
Oh, please, here she goes again. Content creators are a viable source of distributing info. Yeah, I think it's great to have multiple personalities and opinions all out there, and people are basically just having conversations. Pretty much what we do here. We just have conversations. We can kind of come to our own opinion of things. I think that's great. You said, but yet Elon distributes misinformation. Yeah, I saw that too. Pretty much every major news outlet was saying that his stream was this catastrophe, that they started so late because they're old and they couldn't figure out how to stream. I tuned into it. You can see the stream. It wasn't that bad. They were half an hour late, but most times when presidents talk, they're usually an hour late, and that's Harris and Trump. So I'm kind of used to that. They were half an hour late with their start, and then they got into their conversation. It was a nice back and forth, and I thought it was good. It wasn't like groundbreaking or anything, but it was very cool to see an actual conversation with Trump and Elon. It wasn't just a rally where they were talking about their scripted points, which of course Trump kind of went into those as well. I'm not saying that he didn't, but Elon put him in a position where he had to show his character. I think that was great. And I think Harris should do the same. If people actually like Harris for her character, they should be able to see her have a conversation back and forth with someone. And maybe they don't pick Elon because they think Elon's this like MAGA guy, find whoever, on the left, to report with her. So it's a cool conversation, but make it fair. I mean, I would like to actually see a sit-down conversation with Harris to see what actually is she like, not just her campaign speech. That does nothing for anyone.
Sure that we're working to cut taxes for the middle class, for working people, slashing cost for working families, as you have seen them do over and over again. This is something that we believe in. You heard Jared talk about announcements this week about lowering cost, and that is something that they believe in. And the contrast could not be more stark between, if anything, the contrast is between what Republicans want to do. MAGAnomics, you're talking about Bidenomics. MAGAnomics supercharge inflation. That's what they want to do. Raise taxes on the middle class by thousands of dollars. Send tax cuts through the roof. Protect corporate price gouging. Cut Social Security. Cost millions their health care. And heap tax giveaways on billionaires and big corporations. That's the division there. That's where there's really night and day.
But would you admit, at least, that if Bidenomics was more popular, President Biden would still be the candidate?
I'm not going to get into polling. What I will tell you is Bidenomics has been something that both the president and the vice president has worked on. You guys have called it Bidenomics. We talk about how the president is trying to put forward an economic policy, building the economy from the bottom up, middle out, that does not leave behind the middle class and make sure it has equity at the center of it. MAGAnomics, which is very different, which is something that neither of them believe in, wants to do the opposite of what we're trying to do on behalf of the American people. That's the difference.
Something that we've noticed over the last few days.
Now you're noticing a lot over the last few days.
The vice president's team is not holding any press briefings.
Yes.
You are left to answer everything for her, even though you are not the vice president's press secretary. Is that getting old?
Your questions are kind of the same, actually, what he just asked. You're saying, do you think KJP is counting down her days until she's no longer press secretary? Which is pretty much what he's saying. They're leaving her to do all the interviews, all the questions. She's taking the heat from the press. Of course she's going to say no. She's going to give this spiel about how she loves her job. That's what's about to come here. But yeah, they need to actually be out there. Like I said before, we don't even know Harris's character because she won't talk to anyone. It really just comes down to that. We don't know who she is. We don't know her policies. How can you vote for someone? You can't even see a conversation with her. You can't see what she actually wants to do. You can't get a vote that way.
No. Let me tell you something.
Here it comes.
I'm the White House press secretary, as you all know, obviously, for the president, for this administration, for the Biden-Harris administration. It is an honor and a privilege. You hear me say this all the time. Honor and privilege to stand before you to be able to do that job. And I will do it as long as I can, right to the end of this term.
I wonder what her job pays.
And as it relates to the vice president, she certainly has been on the road. She has taken questions from some of you in doing her gaggles. You have seen her. That is something, as anything specific about interview, you certainly would have to reach out to her campaign. But I am proud to be standing here at this podium behind this lectern on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration.
Thank you. The Hunter Biden document seeking State Department help came out after the president was no longer a candidate. Is the president bothered by that at all?
Look, what I can say is what I've said before. He was not in business with his son. He's certainly not aware of this, and this is something that Hunter Biden has to speak to. He's a private citizen. It is something for him to focus on, and I'm just going to have to leave it there.
Now that he is
She's so clueless, but so are all the Dems. I don't think she's actually clueless. I think her job is to say what her party wants to be put out there in the public. I think she's actually probably bright. She can't tell the truth. She's not in a position to really tell the truth. But you can usually see when she's lying. According to Google, base salary is $180K, but you live in Washington, D.C., so is that really a lot of money?
Where is he satisfied with how his son conducted himself in seeking help from the State Department?
I mean, look, I can't speak to this. This is something that is an ongoing process. I gotta let Biden, who's a private citizen, Hunter Biden, who's a private citizen, speak to this. What I can say is the president's never been in business with his son. He was not aware of this, and this is something for Hunter Biden to speak to.
Should the documents have come out more quickly, though, given that it's been years of litigation?
I really can't speak to timeline. The process here is not something that I can speak to from the podium.
Thank me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
not. Whatever.
Happy birthday to you, Karine.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. It's very kind.
Karine, about the World Health Organization just declared a global health emergency as the new form of Mpox is spreading fast in Africa. Is the White House concerned or implementing any measures?
So that is something I have to talk to our team. I have to be honest with you. I have not had that conversation. And so obviously we always keep close track of these things. There's always concerns, but I don't have anything specific to share with you all at this time. Happy to talk to our team here. We have obviously, a pandemic office here. I'm happy to talk to them about that.
And on Venezuela, a couple of questions. Brazil is weighing this idea of suggesting another election in Venezuela to solve this crisis. How does the White House see this suggestion?
So as you know, look, we respect our partners here. Our partners are sovereign countries, and so we have a huge amount of respect for them. And so we would have to defer to them, let them speak for themselves on whatever next steps that they're proposing. That said, we have been in close touch and coordinating. This is our shared hemisphere and is a critical moment for democracy in it, and we are monitoring all of this very, very closely. It is important to note that the vast majority of us, including Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, have asked for transparency and release of the details by tally, the tally votes to be more specific. And so we are ready to support an inclusive Venezuelan-led process to restore democratic norms in coordination with our international partners. But as it relates to what Brazil and Mexico and Colombia are saying, that is something for them to speak to. We respect our partners in this process.
It would mean a lot if they just acknowledge the connections. Hunter gets a job on Burisma. Biden trickles billions of dollars to Ukraine. Don't deny the coincidence. Yeah, but she's given a script. She's not going to give you any information like that. They tell her exactly what to say.
Does the White House recognize Edmundo Gonzalez as the president-elect of Venezuela?
As you know, this is something that we're not going to put terms on this or do anything like that. What we know is what the tally shows us, and we've been very, very clear about that. I'm not going to get into specifics on that.
Sure.
Just a quick one on the Middle East. Sure. Is Netanyahu also to blame for the blockage of the ceasefire deal?
I'm not. I was asked this question, I think, in the gaggle yesterday. I'm not going to get into negotiations from here. I know there's been some reporting out there, just not going to get into negotiations. Tomorrow's going to be an important day. We want to see a ceasefire. We want to see an end to this war. We want to see hostages come home, including American hostages. We want to see increase of humanitarian aid going into Gaza. And we believe the way to de-escalate the tensions that we're seeing in the Middle East is to get to this deal. Not going to negotiate from here. That is just not something I'm going to do. Go ahead, Danny.
Thanks, Karine. On the ceasefire talks, how can you have proper ceasefire talks if one of the parties, Hamas, is probably not going to be there?
Look, and I said this when I was answering the question earlier, there's always political posturing. We see this all the time, and in advance of talks. That's not new. I'm just not going to weigh in on that. And what I will say, the importance of getting this done. We want to see the ceasefire deal. We want to see an end of this war. We are ready. Tomorrow we will be there. The U.S. will be there, and we will be ready to continue these discussions. But there's always public posturing. I'm not going to get into it from here.
If I may, on Ukraine, there's been reports that Russia is redirecting some troops from eastern Ukraine to reinforce the Kursk area where Ukraine is currently carrying out an incursion. Have you got any confirmation of that?
Here's what I will say, and I know this question has come up a lot about what's happening in that region. I will say this war can end today. It could, if Russia would stop the war that they started. Mr. Putin could move on out, right, and end this war today. He started this war, and so I'll leave it there for now. Okay, MJ.
Just to follow up on Legia's question, does the administration have a theory on why there has not been retaliation yet against Israel by Iran or Iran-backed?
I can't speak to the reasoning behind Iran and its proxy. That's not something that I can do from here. What we can say is we want to continue to de-escalate the tensions. We want to continue to have diplomatic conversations. You see what we have done militarily to prepare. We are ready to defend Israel as we did back in April, and that is our commitment. And you see, not just us, our partners in the region have also been very involved and engaged in these diplomatic conversations. And so I cannot get in the head of Iran or its proxies. That is not something for me to do from here. I can only speak to our efforts and what we're trying to do. And the ceasefire deal, which is part of the conversations, obviously the conversation we're having tomorrow in Doha, is really incredibly important, and we will be there. We will be there to continue those conversations.
And just as we get closer to next week, how is the president's convention speech coming along?
I've been asked this question a lot as well. Look, the president certainly looks forward to addressing the Democratic National Committee convention. This is something that he certainly is going to be focused on in the upcoming days. Since this is a campaign event, I would refer you to them on the specifics of the speech and obviously the schedule for next week.
Yeah, we need some dates. So she's saying it is next week.
But what I can say more broadly is the president's looking forward to it. He sees it as an important moment to talk directly, not just to the party, the Democratic Party and delegates, but also obviously to the American people. And so you'll hear from him. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Karine. Just to follow up on Ukraine, and you may have addressed this broadly before, but does the United States have any lingering or ongoing concerns about Ukraine using U.S. weapons as it does this incursion into Russia?
Obviously, I've seen the reportings. We've all seen the reportings. There's nothing here that I can't confirm any of that. What I will say is obviously this is an administration that has been very focused on making sure that Ukrainians continue to have what they need to beat back against Russia's aggression. That is something that we've been focused on for more than 2 years, and that's going to be continuing our commitment, not just us, the more than 50 countries that the president was able to come together to make sure that Ukraine is able to fight for their democracy. That includes making sure that NATO is stronger than it's ever been before. That is a commitment that this administration, that the United States has had. I'm not going to speak to that. What I can say, our policy has not changed, and I'm going to leave it to the Ukrainians to speak to their military operations. But again, as I said to Danny, it is up to, this could end. This could literally end today if Russia would stop the war that they started.
I guess the question is just if you make any distinction between U.S. support for Ukraine defending itself or going on the offense.
I don't have anything more beyond what I just stated. We are obviously going to continue to talk to our Ukrainian partners here to speak about continue to have those conversations as we normally do, but I just don't have anything beyond that.
Just one follow-up on Venezuela. You mentioned the tallies. Just to clarify, is it the United States' position that the opposition candidate won, or is that not the position?
Our position is that obviously Edmundo has gotten majority of the tallies, and it is clear. It is clear. And so what we have said over and over again, and will continue to say, is that Maduro needs to acknowledge that. He needs to acknowledge that.
Just wondering why not call on the president-elect then?
It's just not something that we're going to do from here. What I can say is that we're going to continue to certainly consider a range of options to incentivize and pressure Maduro to recognize the election results, and we'll continue to do so. But the responsibility is Maduro and the Venezuelans' electoral authorities to come clean on the election results, and that's what we're going to continue to call for. I certainly laid out at the top the UN report, which we think is incredibly important. But besides that, it's clear that Edmundo.
It's been, 3 years? Do they really think Putin is going to back down now and listen to the U.S., especially as Ukraine is going into their borders? If anything, they're going to escalate.
Has obviously, with the election results, has the most tally, and so Maduro needs to recognize that.
No, go ahead, right in front.
Thank you, Corinne. There's been a report that an American citizen was detained in Moscow, and I'm curious if the president has been briefed on this matter and if there's anything more that you could share.
I don't have anything at this time about that. I would have to talk to the team and talk to the president. I just don't have anything beyond the report. Go ahead.
German authorities have issued arrest warrants for a Ukrainian national suspected of being involved in blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline in the fall of 2022. Curious just if the U.S. was working with the Germans on this, sharing intelligence, aware of the warrants going out, and if there's any, sense or confidence that this is the correct person.
So no, we did not know about it, or
You interfered with Israel, but not Venezuela?
or in support of it. It's not something that we were aware of. I would have to refer you to the German authority to speak to their own investigation. But we do condemn this apparent act of sabotage at the time. We did condemn it at the time. I don't have anything beyond what the German authority is sharing, and I would have to refer you back to them.
Other than the statement that went out this morning on Austin Tice, has there been any movement at all? Has there been any discussion, negotiations on his release?
So a couple of things. I'm not going to go beyond the statement. We've always been very mindful of not negotiating from the podium or in public. As you know, these are incredibly sensitive matters. And you've seen from this president very, very recently on when he was able to bring home American hostages home, his commitment to making sure wrongfully detained American hostages come home. They come back to their loved ones and their families, and that is something that is a commitment from this president. I'm going to be very, very careful here. I do not want to negotiate in public because these matters are incredibly sensitive. We understand how important it is for their families, not just for us, to have their family member come home.
As a follow-up, has there been any discussion on added value on the part of Syria to holding Tice because he's a former U.S. Marine?
Just not going to get into it from here. I'm just going to be super mindful. Okay.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to join Peter and Raquel in wishing you a happy belated birthday as well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Can I ask about Ukraine as well? I just wanted to know whether the U.S. supports Ukraine's incursion into the Kursk region.
I don't have anything else to share. I don't. What I will say is that we're certainly not engaged in any aspect of the planning or preparation of this operation, but generally speaking, we're going to continue to support Ukraine as they defend themselves against Russia's aggression, Russia's attacks. Don't have anything else to share beyond that. We're not going to speak to Ukrainians' military operation. That's something that they should do for themselves.
Yesterday, POTUS said that the incursion represents a, quote, real dilemma for Putin. What does he mean by that?
I think that's very clear. I don't think I need to elaborate from what the president said. Go ahead in the back. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. On
Venezuela. No, go ahead.
The administration has asked the Supreme Court to lift a block on its student loan cancellation plans. How confident are you of a favorable ruling, given that the court previously ruled against a similar plan last year?
So look, I've said this before. When we put policies out, we believe on the legal merit of those policies. So we're always confident on that ground. But I'll say this as well. Look, when it comes to the student loan, making sure that we give borrowers a little bit of breathing room. This is something that the president has been committed in doing since 2020, obviously throughout his administration. He wants to make sure that we give Americans an opportunity to start their families, right, to buy a home. And we put forth a robust plan, and Republicans got in the way. They blocked it, they continue to block it, and the president continues to move forward in trying to make sure that we can do something that helps Americans, American families. $168 billion, we were able to give a little breathing room to Americans and American families across the country, and that has helped millions of Americans. So we're committed to that, we're committed to moving forward.
The court also got in the way of ruling against that plan last year. Is he usurping the separation of powers by pressing forward after that ruling?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He made a commitment. Republicans continue to get in the way. We're trying to make sure that Americans are able to have a little bit of a breathing room and are not crushed are not crushed by some of these costs that they have to deal with. And this is our commitment. We want to build an economy from the bottom up, middle out, making sure that middle class has an opportunity, has a chance, working families, hardworking families. And that's a commitment that this president's going to continue to make. Tomorrow, you're going to hear from the president and the vice president as they continue their efforts to make sure that we're lowering costs for Americans. You'll hear more in a couple of hours about what that's going to look like, what that announcement's going to be.
Okay.
But
I didn't hear about that.
It is our commitment, the president and the vice president commitment to do just that. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Hopefully it's not late in the day tomorrow. I'd vote for Harris if she would abolish my tax debt. Good luck with that, man. All right, so there is your White House press briefing. So, Harris is not speaking today. I'm pretty sure I looked and saw that. Let me check real quick. Because she did add a event tab finally to her campaign site. I should be able to see what she's actually doing today. Oh, she has all these online events. Nobody cares about that. Online. What is today? The 14th? Yeah, so she's not doing anything today. She had a busy week last week. I think she had at least like 2 or 3 rallies that she was at, if not more. I don't know how many she was at. But there is a Trump rally today. He's supposed to be speaking at 4, so in like 40 minutes. But it's a Trump rally, so that means he's probably speaking at 5. Every time they always wait like an hour before he actually comes out. I'm struggling American who needs help, abolish my tax. I'll pay my student loans, which I have none. And they never want to do anything about the loans going out, like people taking on all this debt. They just want to help the people who have the loans. They forgive some of these loans and then they look at it like this big win. But they should be doing something about the loans. I mean, it's just common sense, right? If you're going to forgive the loans, you should go to the root of the problem and try to fix it instead of just forgiving people's loans. Let me head back to, let's check out Trump's website, make sure it's still at 4. Yep, Donald Trump delivers remarks on the economy in Asheville, North Carolina. So I'm going to watch that one. So I'm going to probably take a break from streaming. I'm going to come back and stream that one. But again, they say it's at 4. It's not at 4. He won't come out until at least like probably 4:40. So we'll see what happens. I think my plan is going to be throw some steaks on the grill, eat some dinner first, and relax. If you've been paying on your loans for 20 years and has dropped $5,000, that's a loan structure issue. Yeah? And they took out a bad deal. Bad deal on that rate. Bad deal on what they were paying back. Probably bad deal on the income that they thought they were going to make. All around. Just bad deal. I paid mine. I paid mine off. I'm not going to wait around for Biden to throw some money at me, so I'll vote for him. I'll pass on that one. But I'll be back. Be back when Trump starts speaking. Or maybe, I don't know if Vance is going to be at that one, if he's going to come out and speak first. But whoever's going to be there, I'm going to watch him. So